Kamala Harris will, in fact, be the first female president of the United States. And she will lose the election to Donald Trump. Those two things will exist together.
So he's going to. So you think? Well, you think he's going to resign before January? Yeah.
That's what
I mean, clearly, if the guy is too incompetent to run for president, he should be too incompetent to remain president for the next 6 months, right? So, yeah, he should resign.
What a novel thought that is, right? Welcome back to the Futures Edge Show. I am Jim Uriel. That's Bob Acino. Today we have one of our favorite guests, one of our favorite people, Rudy Havenstein, who was also, he's amazing longevity because he was the, what did they call the chairman of the Weimar Republic Central Bank?
He was the president of the Reichsbank.
The president of the Reichsbank, exactly, right, yes. And that was in the 1920s, and he's still here to speak to us, which we are very, very fortunate about. And by the way, we have a lot to talk about, it seems. Not much happening.
Anything going on this month?
Right, you got presidents dodging. First of all, okay, Biden, alive or dead? Bobby, you go first.
I thought he was dead till I saw the plane video, and then I saw he was walking maybe 0.5% different. So I think he's dead, and that was a body double. I've completely gone hog wild conspiracy on this.
Yeah, why is it? Because every one of our stupid conspiracy theories ends up being true. We're like a month away from it. By the way, I think this one is a double secret reverse conspiracy, meaning the Democrats know full well that we're chomping on the bit from a conspiracy standpoint. So they keep him out of the public's eye for like 5 days, have us all start saying, see, he's dead. His medical problem was way worse. They trot him out just so they can look at us and go, what's the matter with you people? He's fine. Just go back, put your tinfoil hats back on. Rudy, where are you on this?
Well, that's a common tactic over the years is they will throw, really wild things out to try and discredit the people who are onto the more realistic things. I guess the way I would phrase it is Joe alive or dead? Does it matter?
No.
I mean,
this has actually happened before.
Was he
I don't
running
know
the
if you
show
guys remember.
before?
It was with George W. Bush when Dan Rather lost his job at CBS. Do you guys remember that?
No.
So
Vaguely.
he went ahead with a story about a letter from George W. Bush's commanding officer when he was in whatever branch of the military he was
Texas
in.
National Guard.
Okay, so National Guard. And it basically detailed his dereliction of duty, but then was proven by some like early internet sleuths that this was done with a font that wouldn't have been available on the typewriters at the time that would have been available to his particular commanding officer. So Dan Rather went ahead with a story using a forged letter where the story itself was likely true. We all know what a young George W. Bush was like. So the story itself was probably true, right? But they used a fake letter. So Dan Rather actually lost his job for that. That is not going to be the case now. So I think like the Biden letter is real, but I don't think he wrote it or signed it, quite frankly.
Rudy?
That was 2005. I just looked it up that Rather got fired. And so, well, the important thing is that the George W. Bush administration worked out great for everybody. So anyway, I'm not a big fan.
The Patriot
did
Act?
you see that? Did you see the clip? Did you see that clip that was going around this week of George Bush talking to some people like semi-coherently, and like all these pundits were retweeting it, going, "Oh my God, this guy! Look how far we've fallen!" And me and a few others were just like, "You got to be kidding me!" Don't get me started on what I think of the George W. Bush administration, because I think that's all part of the cause of why we're here today.
Me too. And the Patriot Act is, I assume that's one of the things you're referring to, correct?
Well, sure. I mean, I love Dennis Kucinich. His quote is, "Why did I vote against the Patriot Act? Because I read it." And nobody read it. That's an interesting story, by the way. Remember, there was a couple guys like Daschle and another senator who were opposed to the Patriot Act. They certainly had concerns about it. And so then next thing you know, they get letters of U.S. military grade anthrax, sent to their offices. And then the next vote, 2 weeks later, everyone votes for it. And they never figured out, where that anthrax came from. And I don't think it was from, the Iranians, so.
Well, anyway, let's just think, who is it who likes to collect intelligence? I have no answer. The U.S. intelligence community. Yeah. And by the way, the Patriot Act, morons like Jim Uriel going, yeah, this is a good law, until like 2 weeks later going, wait a second, what did I say there? So I understand.
They had us all fired up and scared.
Yeah.
They like us scared.
So can I show you guys this thing? And Jimmy, to your point, this is where some people are saying that it's like a sort of a double secret probation kind of a thing, where it literally, that's what some people are saying, that the CIA or whoever, right? CIA is not supposed to operate domestically, right? Mm-hmm. Here's like 5 examples of Biden's signatures. And I don't know how clearly you can see this, but we'll put in a big image of this in post. But on the top in the red is his signature on the letter dropping out of the race. And then here's 5 examples of executive order signatures from 2024. So it ends up being a situation of like, which one do you sign? Just look at the B. The B is like, as opposed to 1 stroke, it's 2 strokes in the red, right? It's a line and a B on there. I don't know how well you guys can see this.
Yeah. No, so he's obviously, he did it differently, or somebody did it differently.
Or somebody did it for him. And again, I think it's probably an example of a letter that does exist. He actually wanted to drop out. But like you said, Jimmy, they want to get us fired up, except I think he's dead. So I think it was probably, they took his hand and they just kind of went like this with a dead hand before they buried him. I don't know. That's what they want me to think.
Before we move on to the next topic, which I hope is soon, for God's sakes, Rudy, do you have any comments on this?
Well, I posted a tweet years ago, like, I have to limit myself during this time to a manageable number of conspiracy theories, so, because I get hit with a lot of them because, I'm at least, open to questioning the narrative, even if I immediately figure there's nothing to it. But and based on history, if you're a historian, which is, I kind of say that's kind of what I am. I have a memory. Then to believe there's no conspiracies is incredibly naive and stupid. So just same as like believing everything's a conspiracy, and even the most ridiculous thing. So
right. So on to the next conspiracy theory then. So okay, great. This is when it really hit me, when Cenk Uygur, is that how you pronounce his name? You know who that is from the
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Like that guy, I mean, I've seen him. He is the biggest bully. And it's so funny because I despise bullies so much. But one thing I have to give them credit for is they always know who to bully, who won't fight back. And that's why, sometimes there are certain people it's hard to bully. But anyway, so he's on with Pierce Morgan or Pierce Brosnan. Who's the guy who has the show? Which Pierce one was Morgan. James? Pierce Morgan has a show, and Pierce Brosnan was James Bond. But anyway, he's on with Pierce Morgan. And he's making it seem like it is absolute lunacy to question the events of July 13th as if there might be something more to it than a 20-year-old climbing on a flat roof that they called slope and squeezing off 8 shots at the president. I think it is the height of lunacy to not ask the questions. And even the most casual studier of history would agree with me. Where are you on that, Rudy?
Oh, 100%. I mean, even, a guy like Dave Collum says, if it turns out it's just a 20-year-old, that he's not going to be flabbergasted, but that just shows a level of incompetence by the Secret Service that, and this is Dave's quote, he could not have ever imagined. And I would totally agree with that. I mean, is it possible it was a disturbed 20-year-old and that this was all just unbelievable incompetence and negligence on the Secret Service part? Probably, yeah, that's possible. But you're right to question it because, I mean, Chris Martenson, who's a serious guy, he's done a whole audio study on the audio from the day, and it really sounds like there's more than one shooter. And we've gotten no answers from anybody, have we?
Nor are we gonna. Right.
That hearing yesterday was a joke. No, I mean, because she resigned, and of course she should have been fired the next day. But what have we gained by her being? I mean, sure, get her out. She'll go work for the Atlantic Council or something, get a great job. But there's still the entire Secret Service that was there. I do think the people that were on stage with him, and especially the ones that put their, covered Trump and put their lives on the line, and he's thanked them for that. I mean, I don't think they knew any. I don't think they were in on the plan at all. If there was a plan, I'm not saying there was. I mean, it could just be negligence, and because that's. Unfortunately, that's often the case. But there's so many questions. They saw the guy with a rifle. Why not go to Trump and say, "Hey, we have a guy with a rifle. Why don't you stay backstage for a bit, or we'll play some patriotic music, and you can just chill out till we go talk to this guy and figure out what he's doing."
Right.
They didn't do that, and that's beyond belief.
It's beyond belief. But here's what's bothering me too. So the first it breaks, and then they 2 minutes before the shots they became aware of them. Then it was 5 minutes. Then it was 10 minutes. Then it's an hour. Then I see a bunch of yahoos who are half drunk who are trying to explain it to the Secret Service, and the Secret Service just won't listen. Like, I think there are certain levels of incompetence, and beyond some level, it becomes criminal. Like dropping off your kid in the middle of a lion preserve at the Serengeti Plain and going away. You didn't kill your kid. The lion did the crime, but you're the one who should go to jail. Is this one of those things too? Should people be in jail for that level of incompetence if that's what it was?
Well, I don't know if it's criminal. I mean, they certainly be fired. I mean, if you're that derelict of duty that you see a guy with a rifle, I mean, I would like to think that if, I'm not in law enforcement, I would like to think if I was and I saw a guy with a rifle, I wouldn't wait for, my boss to tell me to, oh, it's okay to go check that guy out. I would check him out. And it sounds like the guy, they had a cop look up and then he pointed the rifle at him. The cop went down. How much time passed between then and the shooting?
They never tell us. Yeah.
They never tell us. So there's so many, where's the FBI and all this? I think part of the problem is people don't trust these agencies after a lot of the stuff they've told in the last, century. But, a lot of people, they think it's funny. It's the same thing with the CIA. They'll say, well, yeah, the FBI did bad things under Hoover or the CIA did bad things, 30 years ago. But if you say that the FBI or CIA did bad things, 3 years ago, they'll say, oh, you're a nutty conspiracy theorist. What makes you think this FBI leadership? I'm not talking about the rank and file because there's probably really good people there. And there are really good people there like doing stuff like helping kids and stuff. But the leadership, what makes you think it's that much different than under Hoover, and corruption, and the same thing at the CIA too. There's great people there, but like Sam Faddis was saying, I saw an interview with him. He said, but can you change the situation? Yeah, he goes, yeah, you need to go to the top floor of the CIA and fire everybody on day one. And he says there's thousands of great people that work there, but at the leadership levels makes you really wonder. So, and of course now they're promoting people not for they're not promoting the guys that have been in Afghanistan or in the field for 30 or 40 years. It seems they're promoting the paper pushers, which is not good.
It was really interesting watching all that. I mean, my initial thought was just Occam's razor, right? That it's just some crazy kid that got on the rooftop. But then the more you look at it and you look at, for example, just how close that roof was, it was literally one of the closest roofs to the stage, right? I think it's probably more of what they call a lie hop situation, which is like let it happen on purpose, right?
Yeah.
That's probably what I was thinking. One of the most interesting things to me was just the glaring DEI stuff that showed through in this particular assassination attempt. Forget about the one Secret Service agent who couldn't find her holster. That was played over and over and over again, right?
Melissa McCarthy doing a bit, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, that supposedly was her first day. I don't know if that's accurate or not. There's so much out there that we don't know if it's accurate. But the one thing that was accurate is they had about a 5'9" female blocking the front-facing part of President Trump, and he's 6'3". And I mean, literally, when they were like forming that circle around him and he's walking off the stage, his head and shoulders are above the woman. She's like this. She can't block him. Like, she can't block his head and shoulders, which he gets shot in the throat. He just got shot in the ear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, guys. Now, another friend of mine who happens to be, I'll just leave out where he is in the hierarchy of all this stuff. He's not at the Secret Service, but he's within the government in that general area. Was very angry about how stretched the Secret Service was on this particular weekend, prepping for the RNC, following other candidates around. And he said that a lot of these people were they were not the team that would normally be protecting the presumptive nominee for the Republican presidential for the ticket. But I don't know how accurate that is. And then the question becomes why. So when you saw that, I think what drives me the craziest about this, Rudy, is when you saw that, you mentioned the hearing yesterday, and when you saw that, the fact that she just wouldn't answer the question about how many shell casings on the roof, being asked repeatedly. I forget who asked her, which member of Congress was asking her, but just over and over again, do you know how many shells? Yes. Can you tell us? Well, I would refer you to the FBI.
Yeah. Well,
and she literally said, we have parallel investigations. She goes, okay, what do you know from your investigation? Well, I would refer you to the FBI.
Well,
it was disgraceful.
I would describe her demeanor as she had contempt for Congress. And I don't know. I joked, well, hey, or I wasn't joking. Why not just take the fifth the whole time? You might as well have. You're not answering any questions. So yeah, it was awful. I did notice someone posted a video of Cheadle's security detail, which looked like they were all giant guys guarding her. Yeah, even on the guys that are, God bless them, that were around Trump trying to help him. You're right. As several people have said, if there were different shooters there, if this was the Soviets, the Russians, or someone trying to hit, they would have had multiple shooters, and they could have easily taken him off as he stood back up. I mean, they should have, somebody said, well, how are these people going to keep a big guy like Trump on the ground if he wants to get up? Well, that's kind of your job is, they don't ask you, sir, do this. Like, they threw Reagan in the car. They didn't stop and say, hey, can we talk, sir, we would like to get you in the car. They threw, they don't, that's their job. I just wonder, are we ever going to get any answers, or is this just going to be memory hold like, the Vegas shooting and some other things that there's been a lot of questions about over the years? I don't know. So
yeah, I guess one of the questions I have, and the reason I lean towards more of a lie-hop situation, again, let it happen on purpose, is because if you were trying to set this up, whether from the Trump side, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, when people came online and started saying, oh, Trump did this himself for effect. Why would you hire a 20-year-old kid who couldn't make his high school shooting team to shoot near your head?
It's absurd
from both sides, by the way.
I have followers who believe. I had a guy text me the other day. He believes that. I'm like, dude, I'm just tolerating you right now. I'm not going to block you or mute you, but you're on notice. It's just wacky. So I mean, you might as well say it was aliens from space that
right.
If you're going to do that, yeah. No, a guy died. I mean, you're gonna. I can't imagine. Plus, as people, I would listen if Trump hires a guy to shoot a rifle into a crowd to try and make himself look good. I mean, that's just a fantasy. But if that was true, he should be. I mean, that's first degree murder type stuff. You can't. So anyway, but yeah, there are some nuts who claim that, including like people that are on The View and stuff. Joy Reid and all that. We're a country full of nuts on all sides now.
There is no question about that. There's one thing I wanted to add. You talked about the FBI before and the J. Edgar Hoover FBI. So my buddy just retired from the FBI about 2 years ago. Been there for almost 40 years. And we were drinking a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me, when I first started at the FBI, these are his words, there was old guys who worked in the Hoover administration too. And it was FBI policy. Everybody knew it, that if you were investigating someone who was relatively high profile and something came up that could embarrass them, particularly sexual exploits, particularly maybe even sexual exploits with the young people, that never went in the official file. That got put in a special file that was given to J. Edgar Hoover, which, by the way, we all know that. And we also know that Meyer Lansky from the mob had pictures of him. J. Edgar Hoover lived with his partner, or whatever his name was.
Tolson,
yeah,
something like
Clive
that.
Tolson. Yeah. And everybody knew it within the FBI, but he had to just distance himself from the investigation of the mob because he was afraid that the mob would.
That's why they didn't go after the mob for so many years, you know, because he had other other priorities. Yeah, no, that's common, and it's fact. And some people say, well, where are the Epstein list? I don't think. I'm sure there's. Well, we pretty much can guess who's on the list by now. But I mean, if there is tapes, who do you think has the tapes? I don't even think maybe the FBI. I was saying the other day, if someone has those tapes, it's going to be the Mossad and the CIA. Yep. And they're not going to prosecute any of the guys on those tapes. They're going to use them to, go to a guy and say, hey, we need some money for this operation. Or, hey, judge, you're going to vote this way on this case. Or, hey, politician, you're going to introduce this bill, or you're going to veto this, you're going to fight this bill. So I think there's never going to be any prosecutions from that.
No, it's amazing. And when you think about the CIA's budget, you think about how they go, even people who don't have stuff on, now they've gotten to a point where they can, you vote for this bill to give us another $1 trillion under the table, or you're going to have child porn on your computer in the morning.
Right.
Certainly possible,
there was a congressman who suggested that. Was that one of the congressmen suggested that? Yeah, that's a real threat. And I'm sure it is. And by the way, I'm sure it's very easy to compromise a lot of these guys. I mean, I used to joke, how long would it take to compromise Clinton or Trump, 5 minutes,
Exactly.
And if you're you and I, you could do it. I could do it. But if you're if you have all the resources of a national intelligence agency, it's got to be the easiest thing in the world. And of course, every single thing that Epstein owned was wired to the gills with cameras. And I have articles on that, from mentioned, 20 years ago about Epstein because back then, like Vanity Fair and other magazines were doing, glowing articles on this mysterious billionaire,
Yeah.
and guess who's hanging out at his house? Clinton, Trump,
Of
and
course.
a whole bunch of other people, like the guys from Google. Sergey Brin was there.
Oh, really? You know what
Oh, yeah.
just absolutely blows me away is that in 2016, on that 4chan, I think it was on 4chan, the QAnon Pizzagate conspiracy theory comes up.
Right.
And it's about this elite pedophile ring. And they still, to this day, the left looks to be like, oh, are you one of those QAnon conspiracy people? I'm like, wait a second. That whole thing was proven to be true. And they're always like, well, it wasn't in a pizza place. I'm like, oh, Jesus, you're going to pick that out. There literally is proven in court an elite pedophile ring. There's no way you get a conviction unless you prove, on Ghislaine Maxwell, unless you prove that someone was trafficked from this person to this person or whatever. Right. There has to be names on it that you people and us are not privy to. Now, here's my question: on if the needle that you have no idea about what happened on July 13th was pointing straight up to this side, it's a conspiracy of greater depth than we know. To this part, it's a crazy 20-year-old. Where does your need? If let's say I have the answer, the ironclad answer in this envelope, where do you slide your chips?
Oh God, that's tough because
you thought it was going to be easy, did you, Rudy?
I don't want to. I really don't want to believe that it's the one side there. I'm going to go with unbelievably incompetent
20-year-old
Secret Service and 20-year-old guy. Although there is some interesting stuff besides. Well, first of all, I want an entire investigation that's beyond over my head on the audio and other indications that there were multiple shooters. Okay, and that may be nothing. There may be something, but certainly with all the video and everything they have there, and it's a small location really in the big scheme of things, they should have all that. And then also I saw an account that said it was tracking like maybe cookies or something from the suspect's device or the shooter's device, and tracing it to other devices, other phones, and that were located in DC in certain places, and also that a phone that the shooter was in communication with. Now I don't know if that means phone calls or texts or what, was also traveling to Butler in the days before the rally. So I mean, that's a separate. I mean, you could look it up, and I don't know if that's has any.
No, it came from the Heritage Foundation, which I ask myself, how in the world is it? And by the way, we love the Heritage Foundation on this show. We know Kevin personally, but I don't know how they get that information.
There's people that can track all this stuff. I mean, that's one of the reasons. That's one of the downsides of today is you can be completely tracked everywhere. So they can track this guy's phone everywhere he is. Now, and then you hear other things like he's got encrypted accounts overseas. I mean, what is that all about? And I haven't looked into all this too much because I don't have the forensics capability to find out whether this story is nonsense or not. So I'm waiting on, who do I wait on? The FBI or whoever
to investigate themselves? You're going to be waiting. We're all dead.
Have they had a press conference yet on it?
No, and they're not gonna. They don't investigate themselves very well. Turns out if they do something bad, they just let it go for 50 years. Well, Bobby, before you ask the next question, where is your needle? Where does your stack of chips slide to? It's the ironclad answer in my hand right now. What are you betting your money on?
I think it's a crazy, demented 20-year-old kid that they knew about, but they thought, let's see how he does.
So you don't think they MK Ultra'd him at all or anything like that?
Well, I mean, it's possible. I just think, for a huge government organization that may have orchestrated JFK and then the killing of Oswald after that by a guy who died of cancer later, would have just picked a guy who was a bad shot. Now, in fairness, he did nick him in the ear. I mean, he was actually going to make the shot if Trump didn't turn his head. But it just seems to me to be a weird choice. And it's like, hey, kid, shoot him in the head, and then we're going to shoot you in the head right after. I mean,
okay,
I guess.
Good. Hands in. Team on three. 1, 2, 3. Team.
Yeah, I guess they might have left that last part out. But anyway.
So your question then?
No, my question goes to almost a completely different thing. Rudy and I talked about this a little bit back and forth, kind of out in the open in private on X, and talked about some of the misleading things that are said by financial influencers and political influencers out there. Rudy, you'll probably know almost exactly what I'm talking about, but there's a pretty famous young financial influencer who has she pronouns or whatever. It's a woman. And she is out there now basically shilling in my view, for the left. And it's really disappointing to me because, Jim, we actually had her on the show in the very early days, very, very early days, before anyone except you, me, and Rudy watched us. And she's very charming. She's very endearing. But she just, one of the key things, like on a video she did recently, she talked about economic plans between, I believe it was Harris, it was definitely Biden Harris, versus Trump. And in one of the things she said, put up Project 2025, which we know Project 2025 is from the Heritage Foundation. It is not only is it not the Republican platform, it's not Trump's platform. As a matter of fact, he denies knowing who wrote it. Now, I doubt that that's accurate. But one of the things that she put in there was that Project 2025, which she claimed was Trump's platform, was going to cause a $6,000 a month tax increase for a family of four.
Text me who this person is. When you're done asking the question, text me the name.
Okay.
Will you? Yeah.
And I think Rudy knows who I'm talking about. And I actually reached out. What's that?
But those people are, those pundits are a dime a dozen. But I do, I know who you're talking about.
Okay,
yeah,
so she actually put that out. I reached out to a friend of ours at the Heritage Foundation. Here's the reply I got. They're having a field day with Project 2025, which is not Trump's platform, but most everything is completely false. Attached are a few resources for you. She sent me all the different arguments and talking points, which I won't necessarily use, but Project 2025, they falsely assume it would eliminate the child tax credit. That's how they come up with the ridiculous figure of a $6,600 hike for middle-class families with two children. This is wrong. There is no proposal to end the child tax credit in Project 2025. Rudy, first of all, I want to know if there's enough courage out there, if there's enough time to call the left out and say that Project 2025 is not Trump's platform. It's not even the Republican Party's platform, number one. And will anyone ever call these influencers out, or is there too much support behind them in your view?
Well, I mean, certainly the media is 90%, one way. But I don't support either party. So I've stayed out of this whole thing. I'm not interested in, I won't be voting for either candidate, a major candidate. Where I live, it doesn't matter. It'll be overwhelmingly for Kamala, deep blue state. So I stay out of all this. But pundits like the one you're mentioning, and are a dime a dozen. And as I put it to you, if Bloomberg is promoting you, how edgy can you be?
And Bloomberg is supporting her.
Of course.
Jim and I do stuff for Bloomberg, by the way.
Well, that's fine.
But the generally reason I bring that up, Rudy, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. Jim and I do stuff for Bloomberg, but they basically say, "Here's a subject, give us 2 minutes on it," and that's it.
Okay,
we're not paid for that.
You talked about bullies earlier, and some people you can't bully. When I first was on Twitter 10 years ago, I had some of these guys, these prominent FinTwit guys some of them are still around, who would come after me when I had 100 followers. And I remember that, and I would fight back. And generally they they left me alone. They don't bother me anymore. Now, I never blocked them until about 2020 when COVID hit. And then I remember once Zero Hedge got banned because it posted the truth about, the virus, something that didn't fit the narrative. Once they got banned and all these guys are crowing about it and laughing, I was like, so I did block a bunch of people then that I was just sick of all these years, because there's nothing to be gained from it. Some people you can debate with, some people they're beyond hope, and it's not worth dealing with. And, to be honest, when I started, I started with 0 followers like everybody else. And Zero Hedge would on occasion, post something that I had sent, and I appreciated that. It gave me a lot more exposure, and it helped me grow in the early years. And we don't engage hardly much anymore, but back in the day it was useful. So it kind of ticked me off when they got banned, and that was probably around February or March 2020. So anyway, but I don't mean to defame listen. I have to post this sometimes too. When I criticize journalists, economists, bankers, it's not all of them. It's the ones that, as I put it, help create the surreal kleptocracy. So the ones that are shills for the establishment narrative, that's basically the ones that bug me. And frankly, business, Bloomberg has more than its fair share of them. Although they also do some great some good business reporting. So, I mean, there's others too that were total jerks to me, including a guy that I really liked during the GFC, and for some reason he came at me out of the blue. And again, this is when I'm small. You know, I got 100 followers or something. So that talk about bullying, but you want, you know, as I say, I got the receipts, man. If you want to go at it, we can go at it. But I choose not to do that anymore, because there are people that I've gotten into arguments with, and then I have to watch too that my first reaction isn't to be, you know, dismissive. And so sometimes I will try and say, well, okay, I get your point, but what about this? And I've had people before that started off like coming at me really angry, and then we ended up, you know, they ended up following me or something. But then you run into the people, and you guys know the type too, that are just insane tribalists, and they cannot. I mean, I've blocked probably maybe as many on the right as on the left, because, for example, you know, there's a lot of people out there that want to think that Trump is some sort of religious figure who is, you know, never knew Jeff Epstein, and he only met, you know, Ghislaine once or something. I'm like, dude, you got to be kidding me, okay? I mean, I try to be completely, and I think that's part of my appeal, is like, I call it as I see it, you know, and like I said, because X and most media, well, I know a lot of people think X now is conservative, but there's a lot of nuts on X, and I will, and a lot of them tend, you know, I will call it out when I see it. You know, I remember a quote from Taleb years ago says, if something is nonsense, you know, say it's nonsense. You know, someone has to raise their hand, and I'm not going to lose my job over it, and other people will. So I don't mind. And I've called out a lot of nonsense over the years, and I think my stuff ages very well. And I say the only, you know, stuff that I've posted that I really really regret is when I say that this stock is overvalued, and then it goes up like 10 times from there over the years. So that definitely has happened.
Guys like Carl Quintanilla and Jim Cramer, if you listeners want to point a finger at someone and just say they are a worthless shill, let's go with those guys.
Carl followed me for years, and we had many exchanges. And then one day, out of the blue, he just blocked me. And there's a follower of mine who tweeted him and said, "Hey, Carl, why did you block Rudy?" And he goes, this is exact quote, that I have a screenshot of it. It's, I don't remember why, but I'm sure it was a good reason.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And Santoli blocked me like the same week that Quintanilla did, after like 10 years. So
I think something went on at CNBC, like they had to start distancing themselves with people who made sense.
It seems like that all happened. I can't. It was within the last couple of years. But no, Carl was would respond to me for a long time. I think I got to see if Dominic blocked me, but he was always cool.
I always liked Dominic. I think he's kind of.
I always liked him. Yeah. Bertha Coombs, I always was complimenting, and you know, I said she just comes on and she does the news, and she doesn't say anything, you know, stupid like so many of them. I think Sid totally got tired. I would pick on him sometimes because, you know, it's just like, oh my God, you know, sometimes I just tell him, Mike, you don't have to do this. What are you doing? It's like, you know,
because it's like, only because what you're saying is sometimes he seems like a balanced voice in there.
No.
Okay.
So, anyway, and then, you want to know the first one at CNBC that blocked me was Kernan, Joe Kernan, years ago.
Oh, really?
Wow, I'm shocked at that.
Yeah. I know, and he's a right-wing favorite, and so, and then, of course, Andrew Ross Sorkin, man, he finally blocked me, and
he's the softest human being I've ever seen. Like, just everything about him looks like he can't even keep his shape. He's so soft.
He loves to be in the presence of money. That guy, he just oozes. I mean, when he interviews somebody like Lloyd Blankfein, I used to joke like, man, he's just basking in the glow of these guys. I mean, he loves it. You know, that goes way back too. So anyway, I finally got him to block me. Probably
Brian Sullivan.
Sully, I've texted a few times. I assume I am on mute by a lot of these guys too. So no, I don't think he's blocked me, but I would text these guys. Hey, you have a very close friend of Jeff Epstein on your show right now. Ask him about that. And they would. Yeah. You know, or Harvey Weinstein.
A good guy.
Yeah, we like.
I don't think he's probably has me muted, but I did. But you know, all of them. You know, Wilfred, who's back apparently, the British guy.
David Frost.
David Frost.
David Frost. Yeah. No, but I mean, no, I don't blame him. I mean, I have a very different point of view, and of course, like Upton Sinclair says, you know, it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on not understanding it.
Amen.
So, yeah, I run into that all the time. So
okay, let's move on to the election. So again,
fun.
We are 2 weeks. About a month ago on this show, We said the one thing that is absolutely certain is the next 4 or 5 months are going to be taught about in history classes for the next 300, 400 years. I stand by that. It's obviously true now, and I think it's going to get a lot weirder. What are the weird things that are going to happen in your predictive mind?
Well, no one I vote for ever wins, so I don't really have. I'm not convinced it. Other than the really super annoying woke stuff that the Biden administration was all over, I don't think there's going to be that much difference. I would say the main thing that would support Trump is that I think he's less likely to start World War III than Kamala and her crowd. Although, if you remember, Trump's administration was full of people who did want to start World War. He brought John Bolton in and Pompeo and all these guys.
Right. He fired missiles in his first month in office, right?
Yeah. And you remember, Trump also wanted negative interest rates, and he also wanted more QE. When the Fed was talking about easing up, he said, "I want more QE, and I want lower rates, and negative rates." So, me, I think negative rates and the ZERP was horrific for most of the population. And so anyway, with surprises, I don't know. Kamala's running mate. I saw people were throwing around Beto today. Good luck with that. I mean,
wow, that guy's still around. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she's gonna. I have no idea.
You want to know my prediction? You can bank on it. Which, by the way, guys who I work with will tell you that 2 weeks in advance, I picked the day he was going to drop out of the race. So I'm hot right now. So stick with the hot roller. Kamala Harris will, in fact, be the first female president of the United States, and she will lose the election to Donald Trump. Those two things will exist together. Yeah.
So he's going to. So you think? Well, you think he's going to resign before January? Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly, if the guy is too incompetent to run for president, he should be too incompetent to remain president for the next 6 months, right? So yeah, he should.
What
resign.
a novel thought that is, right?
And then, how does that work? She would become president, and then would she then select her own? Anyone could be vice president.
No, there's a system, isn't there?
Oh, well, I don't know. Does the Speaker of the House become vice president? I mean, how's that work? I honestly don't know.
You're asking the wrong guy there. I hate politics. Okay. Yeah.
We should we'll do some research next time before.
But
the thing is, you guys
up like experts.
I tell you, part of the beauty, and I highly recommend this, is after Trump won in 2016, I stopped watching all cable news. So I run into people all the time, left and right, who are outraged about this particular issue, that particular issue, and they're yelling at me, "Can you believe this?" And I'm like, I don't know anything about it. I'm just so happy.
Yeah, okay, that's a nice thought.
It's. I mean, you can still do other. Obviously, I get information from other sources, but just stopping that cable news, the MSNBC, the Fox, the CNN, it's just all they want to do is push your buttons, And I wouldn't go to BuzzFeed or any of those nutty, any of those places either. So I don't know. Even local news has been kind of, ever since COVID, has been kind of wokeified. So it's kind of annoying. But there are places you can at least get basic information.
Twitter.
I do a lot of research on my own too. Like if someone says, "Oh, this person is considered for VP or something," I'll actually just go off and do research or look in books, or I'm trying to find out something about them without having Joy Reid tell me what to do.
Well, you don't find her
or Sean Hannity, or Sean Hannity, or
yeah, right, exactly. I wish we could just hammer that point home a million times, is that we want critical, logical thinkers, and neither side is 100% right, and neither side is 100% wrong. We make, we say Bobby and I both, I think, are voting for Trump. I'm not sure if Bobby is or not, but I know I'm voting for Trump. Do I think
you
Trump
guys
is
in New York, or where you guys at? Oh,
you're
in Illinois. You're Chicago. That's right.
You know why I think it matters now is because in 2016 I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Elvis or Mickey Mouse or something. Didn't. And then all of a sudden they start just going on and on about the popular vote, which, by the way, it's asinine. Okay, but if you're going to talk about it, then you'll get the real voters, because I do think there's a substantial amount of people in states like ours who, if it mattered, would vote a certain way. Because it don't, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of funny, because I remember that. I joke about it sometimes because, he couldn't fill, there'd be a very small number of people going to Joe's rallies in 2020. And then this 81 million they throw out. So now I just use that as my go-to number now when I want to throw out some outrageous number. I just use
81 million.
Yeah, 81 million. Yeah.
You know what bothered me the most about that whole thing, and then I'll shut up. I know I'm talking too much. But when the 81, we're from Chicago. Bobby's from Chicago too.
Right.
And
I knew that. I
right,
just
yeah,
got
no, you just
inflated.
rap. But anyway, so we rigged elections, rigged elections have been going on our entire life here. It's common
Sure.
knowledge. It was admitted on
Right.
TV. But here's the problem I have is that the night was the oddest thing ever. The night of the election in 2020,
It
we
was.
stopped the polls, water leaks, whatever. We're hearing all these stories, and then the next week when they crown him king, and you say, "Wait, are you sure that was right?" Everyone in unison on the left going, "What are you talking about? How could elections ever not be fair in this country? Are you crazy?" Like, whoa. This was like the ivermectin response. That's how I knew ivermectin worked, by the way, is because every word I thought about you defended
How do
myself.
you close up and go home without finishing the count when you know it's going to be a significant election? I don't know. I guess it was very weird, but if this was 2020, we already would have been, this video would have already been taken down by now.
So things are getting better.
I don't like using the word stolen, but I was listening to a show just
American
yesterday
history.
where they said it was pretty much understood that there was something they called the margin of error vote in Philadelphia for years. And it was just a certain amount of votes that were always discovered every single election in Philadelphia that went Democrat. And the only times the Republicans would worry in Pennsylvania is if somebody was polling within that margin of error vote, which was larger than any other state because there was always a bunch of votes that would just turn up. I don't like to use stolen, but what drives me crazy, guys, and you could tell me if I'm nuts about this, is what the left does, and I'm sure the right does this too. Anybody can point out an example of this to me if you know of one. I just don't know of one. Where instead of saying that didn't happen, they say there is no evidence of that happening.
Big difference.
OJ beat the rap of killing his wife and her boyfriend, right? Which, by the way, I got a funny story about that off air. But OJ beat that rap. But there's very few people that think that he didn't kill those two people. There just wasn't enough evidence. I would tell you the people on the left would say that, Russia helped Trump. But what's his name? I can't even remember his name. I disliked him so much. Mueller didn't pursue anything because there wasn't enough evidence. So, when the right says there is no evidence that Russia helped Trump, the left doesn't believe it. But when the right says, the election was stolen, they go, there's no credible evidence that there was any voter fraud. That's not the same as saying it didn't happen. There's a certain thing, it's the smell test, right? And the 2020 election doesn't pass the smell test. By the way, just off the side, and I'd like your comment on this, Rudy.
Yeah.
Johnson did not have a vice president for the remainder of Kennedy's term. And then he chose a vice president for his second term. So that's how that worked. I'm reading here now, the new president nominates a candidate for vice president must be confirmed by a majority of Congress, both houses.
Oh, really?
So
Both houses.
Johnson never did that.
Okay.
He just never named one because
so
it was
I guess
what it
Johnson,
was like less than a year or something.
That's another question. So if Johnson had died in office with no vice president, I guess the Speaker of the House would have.
That's my guess.
Yeah. So it would have gone along with the normal secession, right? And then when he went for a second term, he chose Hubert Humphrey. But had he picked one, it would have had to been confirmed by both houses of Congress.
Yeah, it was considered a useless job.
Yeah,
most
still is, right? Yeah. We have a useless candidate on the left now.
Although she did a crack-up job on the border.
Yeah. Well,
for laughter.
I try to be more, I have followers that are, very left and right, and I try and maintain a balance just by being fair. I do pick on both sides. I think
you do,
and that ticks off, people on both sides. So that's okay. I wrote before the election a thing like I had read. Oh, Noah Smith blocked me too because he wrote a thing about how he was talking about civil war and, we're all going to, the election, it's going to be contested and the military is going to split. We're going to fight on regional lines. And he made it sound like it's going to be like Rwanda in 2020. And I was like, no. And I posted to everybody, there's not going to be a civil war. The military is not going to turn on itself. I wrote this before the election. I said, look, these two guys are not worth losing friends over. I go, if Biden wins, suck it up. If Trump wins, suck it up. And that was my attitude too. I'm not leaving the country. I posted the other day, if Biden wins or Trump or RFK Jr., I promise not to leave the country because am I happy with certain? No, but I'm not going to leave the country. Where am I going to go? Honduras, or something. So and I said, you know what? You think the election is rigged? Well, welcome to every close election in
Yeah.
American history. And, you know, there's people that think Kennedy stole it from Nixon in 1960, and he may have. And there's been other, you know, Gore. There's people that have questions about the Gore-Bush election, you know, serious questions. Here's a problem, too, that I was thinking of. You also have everybody, you know, just as the Democrats take the black and Hispanic voters for granted, I don't know why the GOP just assumes. I mean, why do they write off all these people, you know, Hispanic and black? Seems like they do. You know,
Totally agree.
California. Look at the insanity going on in California. Your kid wants to have a sex change, and the school isn't allowed to tell you. You know, that just passed, but they have all wacky stuff there. Do you think black and Hispanic families like this crap? No, the GOP should be going to these people, because a lot of them are, you know, there's huge Vietnamese population here. They're all entrepreneurial people, you know. You think the Gavin Newsom is their natural place to go? No, these and hardworking Hispanic and black people, they should be drawn to someone that's, you know, helps them in their, you know, build themselves up. I mean, the schools are abysmal. Not just, I'm sure they are in Chicago too. They're abysmal in California, by and large, the public schools. They don't teach them to read and write. That's a disgrace. The GOP should be reaching out to these people and saying, hey, we want to fight these unions that are the teachers' unions. It's probably the worst thing that ever happened to the schools, in my opinion. And I'm not anti-union. I'm anti-teachers union and what they've done. But these are issues, and it's like the GOP, it's like they don't, I'm just dumbfounded. I'm like I've said before, put me in charge of your PR, either party. And I'll because I could just run ads and all this stuff. And it's like, I think that's why we call it the uniparty. I mean, again, does it really matter? I mean,
right.
You know, on most things, you know, monetary policy is not going to change. Foreign policy never seems to change. There's always wars. I don't know. Trump, you know, talked a good game in 2016, and then he brings in, you know, Mnuchin and the Goldman guys to replace Obama Citigroup guys. So anyway, I'm a skeptic, not a cynic, but a skeptic on all that.
I just want to throw in real quick, if I could, Rudy, that a couple of weeks ago we had Dr. Carrie Ingraham on the show from the Discovery Institute, American Center for Transforming Education. And that's her whole thing, is kids should be able to read and do math. And K through 12 is the key to it. And everybody that's interested should go watch that episode and go to discovery.org/education/donate.
She was lovely. Just
yeah,
such a
she
fun
was great.
girl, too.
And you guys should donate to this thing, because her entire platform is, I just want to teach the kids. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just want
they're not doing it. They're not doing it. They're not doing it in Baltimore, and they're not doing it in Chicago. They're not educating the kids, and then they're not prepared. They're paying 36. I mean, there's 36% credit card rates, and they don't understand contracts. They don't understand auto loans. They don't understand credit cards, and they run into trouble. And anyway, yeah, education is a disgrace.
But they don't have to care. Like in private sector unions, they sit at the table and negotiate against someone who's on the other side, who both of you mutually assured destruction if you screw it up. Sure. And in public unions, there's nobody on the other side. They're just
the taxpayers, the adversary in that case. Yeah. I hear you. And of course the politicians are negotiating with them, and then they get the politicians elected. It's a very corrupt.
That's what happened in Chicago. That's what Brandon Johnson. By the way, the Democrat, like establishment Democrats in Chicago and in Illinois, were not really for Brandon Johnson by any stretch. It was the teachers union that flexed their muscles at the end and put him in, despite the fact that he literally and factually ran on a pro-crime platform. Anyone who wants to take the other side of that, you will lose this debate. I can tell you 5 different things he ran on that were literally pro-crime. Go. Yeah.
It's another issue that's most of these crimes are occurring. They're hurting the lower 50% of the population, because they live in the neighborhoods where most of these crimes occur. Yeah. It's absurd. And I've pointed out a number of times, letting 50,000 immigrants in a week for the last few years, which Biden has done, that's not threatening you and Bob's livelihood. It's not threatening me. It's threatening your lowest income, hardest working, poor people in America. And I don't know why the Republicans don't frame the issue in that. Well, I know why the Republicans don't, because they like cheap labor too. Yeah. So the guys, not your rank and file Democrats or rank and file Republicans, they don't like what's going on at the border. But I think the guys, the donors at the top, Mike Wilson, the guy from wherever he is now, he was on talking
Morgan
to
Stanley.
Guy Adami, and I have a clip I posted where he's going, we've got all these immigrants coming in now, and they're willing to work at far below market wages. I mean, he comes right out and says it, and he's saying it as a positive thing. And I'm not knocking him on that because that's how Wall Street thinks, and that's how FinTwit thinks. And I've got, I just posted today a picture of 4 guys on a boat, and 2 of them are wearing life jackets, drinking champagne, talking about how great the stock market is, and the other 2 are bailing out the holes and the other side of the boat. And the guy, and I said, this is FinTwit in a nutshell. You got all these guys, they're like, I've heard people say this, I'm making money. I don't care that the country's going to hell in a handbasket. And I do. If you have kids or grandkids and you care about, or you're single, don't have kids and you care about the future of the country, it's not good that you have, this Guatemalan level of wealth inequality, and it's just getting worse.
Yep. I think there's no question. I say it to people all the time that Democrats in the administration tend to make me more money. Bad economic policies just force the Fed, to make rates lower, assets go higher. Guess what I own? Assets. Right. Yeah. So I don't think there's anybody my own best interest when I fight.
I don't think there's anybody on Twitter who's been more tried to do more to show what a disaster the Federal Reserve has been for most Americans than me. And yet I will freely admit, and I've posted this years ago, I'm not short. And their policies have benefited me personally.
Yep.
But I like to also say, I'm not a psychopath. If someone says, Rudy, you get all the money in the world and everyone else is impoverished, but you'll be able to buy everything, I would not take that deal. You know what I mean? It's like,
of course not.
What good is that? Of course not. And so, but it seems like a lot of people would. I've had people.
Would all the women throw themselves at me because I was the only rich guy?
That may
I won't
be,
take it anyway.
That ship has sailed. Yeah. So anyway.
Real quick, guys, I want to ask you both a question about the Fed. A friend of mine and Jimmy's, Dr. Kamal Shri Kumar, put out a note this past week, and the title of his note was, "Why Does the Fed Want to Lower Rates?" And he went through the entire case as to why they shouldn't. And then basically his conclusion was, I'll just read a quick excerpt here. The young shepherd in Aesop's fables discovered the crying wolf repeatedly had big disadvantages. So his conclusion is basically like, they've said it's going to be appropriate so much that, and they said that inflation is beaten in enough words that basically they need to cut rates in their minds. Yeah. You guys buy that or no?
You go first.
Yeah,
Rudy.
I mean, I don't care if they. I mean, what do we have? Five and a quarter,
5.5, right?
If they want to go to, we're about average. I mean, that's the thing. Rates finally normalized after 15 years, and so that's where we are now. You can. First of all, I don't believe CPI. I've talked that to death. So, but let's say CPI is 3% or whatever. Okay, so they go to 4. They cut 4%. That's not the end of the world to me. What bugs me more is that balance sheet of theirs, which even Druckenmiller and many others have said was the biggest exacerbator of wealth inequality. Was 2.7 trillion of MBS they bought. I mean, for crying out loud, even as they were buying MBS, even as houses were up 20% year over year.
Yep.
They owned zero in 2008. Okay.
Right.
And they bought like half of it after 2008 and half of it in 2020.
I thought a lot of poor people owned MBSs and got the price appreciation. No, probably not. Right.
Poor people don't. Even Randy Woodward is, I don't know if you know him. He's smart. He sells bonds to banks, I think. And so he knows the plumbing of that. And he said, he's like, I don't know why the Fed was buying these MBS. He goes, we had buyers for them. We were going to buy it. And he said, I think and I have a clip of this I put out too. He says, I think they were bailing someone out, possibly in Europe. We're the Federal Reserve of the globe. We care more about some bank in Germany than we do about the American middle class. I mean, It's just obvious.
So the people who are listening, what he's talking about, let's say there's a bank in Europe that has a shit ton of MBSs. They're popping up the price so the bank doesn't go insolvent, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So...
So the question comes to me. I do think the Fed suffers from a lot of these psychological problems. Like, I think they get painted into a corner with their own words. I think they get painted into a corner with what the market thinks they should do. And I think they do it because of that. I wish it was a much more automated system. I mean, we could probably brainstorm it and come up with 20 different inputs that if this does this, this does this, okay, rates are too low, rates are too high. I don't think it would be that hard. And is that a pipe dream, you think, Rudy? We'll let you have the last word.
I don't know. I mean, I think that they, as Jim Grant says, they price fix rates and then they try to predict the future. I mean, somebody said just replace the FOMC with the 2-year yield because it tends to lead the Fed funds rate. So, I mean, if that could be done, if anything could be done in government, I would think the FOMC could be replaced with AI. Just have some sort of rule. Somebody, I forget who it was, if it was Whalen or someone like that, who said, just make, what was it? Something like, make the Fed funds rate, 50 or 100 basis points above the CPI or something like that. But there's already a massive incentive to fake the CPI, right? I mean, that's a complete joke.
Absolute joke.
Don't get me started on that.
Okay, but that's actually probably a good place to cut it. Okay, he's Rudy Havenstein. Follow him on Twitter. It's at Rudy Havenstein, correct?
Right. And then I have a rudy.substack.com.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm a subscriber to rudy.substack.
Yeah, so am I.
Have some fun there. Yeah, more of a long form, kind of just rambling, but it's all kind of eclectic. And
I totally dig it. So anyway, this has been the Futures Edge. Thank you guys for joining us again. Remember, none of this works without the support you guys have given us, and you've given us a crap ton of it, and we are very, very appreciative. Please keep up with the DMs we get. Please keep up with the retweets. Most importantly, please keep up with subscribing to our YouTube channel and our Rumble channel. We want to spread it out to different platforms. We've had great success on Twitter, but it's not a full success unless we have a backup plan, and that's going to be Rumble and YouTube for when we get our asses kicked off Twitter, which is surely going to come at some point in time. This has been the Futures Edge. I'm your Muriel. That's Bob Iacino. That's Rudy Havenstein, who we have no idea what his first name is.